My coworker is always stressed and it's stressing me out. What do I do? We'll talk about this question in today's Teacher Talk episode. Well, welcome back to the Teach for the Heart podcast, where we tackle teaching challenges from a biblical perspective. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. I'm here today with Julie, our podcast manager and one of our Teach for the Heart Plus mentors. Julie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Of course, happy to be here.
So we got a question recently on one of our Teacher Talk submissions, and this is the question that they asked. She said, how do I work alongside a co-teacher who is less than godly or is always stressed? Now, I thought this was an interesting question, especially just the way it was worded. So there's kind of some nuance to that. When she says it's less than godly, I'm kind of wondering if this is a Christian school or a public school, but we're just going to kind of approach this question from both perspectives. Julie, what was your just first impression upon hearing this question?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting as well. And I can only speak from the public school perspective since that's what my background is in. And so typically in those settings, faith is not a conversation that is had openly, maybe behind closed doors with your coworker privately. But my first reaction was, well, pray for them. That is something you definitely can do. If you're like me, sometimes you hear other people's stress and you take that on yourself because you're a fixer and maybe too much of an empath sometimes. But that is something that you can do whether you're public or private school. Just take a moment to pray for them, pray for their stressful situation because yeah, teaching can be stressful. So that was just my knee jerk reaction was to think, yeah, stop, pray for them and pray for how can I be a light to them? How can I help them? And whatever it is that they're going through.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. We want to pray for them, right? That is something we can always do. And I think also praying for ourselves. There seems to be implied in this question a little bit that this teacher is struggling then with it too, right? So we can pray for wisdom for ourselves and what to say, what not to say. And I think another key thing to pray for ourselves if needed is humility, right? Sometimes we get an idea then of like, oh, almost feeling like I'm better than this person because they either don't know God or, like I said, I'm almost picking up on a nuance here of maybe it's a Christian school and they feel like their coworkers should be more Christ-like than they are. So I don't know. But praying also for humility for ourselves, right? Because we've got to watch out for that pride or feeling like we're better. We want to, if we're going to try to help other people, we definitely need to come from it from a place of humility and trust in God.
Yeah.
The second thing I was thinking about was then, well, there's kind of two sides to this coin. So one of the other sides then is looking for opportunities to be a light and a help to them. Julie, I think you were talking a little bit about that. Did you have any ideas on how maybe we could do that?
Yeah, I mean, just simply asking them, like, hey, what can I do for you? Sometimes just being asked that is such a relief. I know in the past when I've been stressed and a coworker said, hey, let me run your copies for you. I'm like, thank you so much. My time feels so stretched thin. So just simple tasks like that can be super helpful. But of course, you want to caution yourself where if you are stressed and you also are busy and don't have time to take on any other tasks, maybe don't stretch yourself too thin where you're taking on their tasks, but just asking, hey, how can I help? Or offering suggestions of, oh, you're struggling with keeping organized. Well, I have this great planner and this is what helps me. And so maybe not sharing too much advice if they're not asking for it, because I know sometimes that might be unwarranted, but just offering your time, offering to be a listening ear. Sometimes people just need to vent. And so those are just simple things I feel like we can do to be that light in this situation.
Yeah, those are great examples. And even sometimes just being kind, right? Just being kind to someone doesn't take a lot of time, but just being that little light can be such a difference. And I think too, we talk about, reaching out to others, right, is something that God has called us to do. And I think as teachers, we often think about our students and how we can reach them, but we don't always consider, sometimes it's our coworkers that's God's calling us to be a light to. And I think we've talked about this concept before, but it's been a little while. Sometimes we think about evangelism or discipleship as like a one-time thing, like, right? Like I witnessed to somebody and they got saved and it was amazing. And I mean, obviously that happening. That is amazing. But that's not the only valuable thing that we do in witnessing to others, right? Sometimes we are just a little step. If you have a coworker that might be antagonistic to the gospel, well, if they know you're a Christian and you are kind to them, that might be a little step that God's using to show them, hey, not all Christians are mean. That might be your place in their life, right? And going on, just little steps, little conversations, but laying foundations for future conversations, right? And even in a Christian school, if you do have people that you're saying, man, I feel like they could grow in their faith, well, there might be opportunities just to disciple them in your little everyday conversation. So I guess I'm just saying, never minimize the value of just little interactions and how God can use that in their lives if we are open to being kind, to speaking how God leads us to speak, and just kind of helping people and modeling Christ to them, whether they're believers or not.
That's true. The Bible talks about how you'll know them by their fruits, good fruit or bad fruit. And so, like you say, kindness, that's one of the fruits of the Spirit. And so, being able to show that, to show patience with them, to show love, all of those things absolutely are going to be beneficial in one form or another.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation, and they want to let you know that applications are now open for the 2026 Faith in Nation Student Forum. Each fall, the Herzog Foundation hosts an incredible 4-day retreat for outstanding high school seniors from Christian schools and homeschool co-ops. The Faith in Nation Student Forum gives students the opportunity to strengthen their Christian worldview and engage with government leaders. Students can also participate in teen challenges, outdoor adventures, and social events designed to build leadership skills and lasting friendships. The Herzog Foundation covers the cost of the retreat, all except travel, making this an amazing opportunity for your high school seniors. Help them apply. Applications close September 18th. Learn more and apply at herzogfoundation.com. Now, back to our program. And then one last thing I wanted to talk about is, though, the other side of that coin. So I think it's important, like you say, I have a coworker that's maybe annoying me, that I seek to reach out to them. But there's the other side where we do need to pay attention to how that person might be affecting us, right? And we might sometimes notice, man, I have a certain coworker and their stress is really rubbing off on me, or, they're causing me to feel really discouraged. So we do need to pay attention to that. I said the last point first because I think we always need to be reaching out to people. We can't just shut ourselves off as Christians and just say, I'm not interacting with anyone that ever annoys me. I don't think that's what God's called us to do. But we do need to pay attention to how it's affecting us. And that might mean praying for some wisdom and maybe making some adjustments, right? If someone is really stressing me out, I might say, okay, I'm not always going to eat lunch with this person. Or, when I'm getting stressed like this, I'm going to need to stop. I know I'm going to need to take 5 minutes and pray and practice gratitude and like reframe my mind after I talk to them, right? Just paying attention and being wise in where we do and don't interact, because we need to reach out and guard our own hearts too.
And like I mentioned, like sometimes you can be a little too empathetic where you're taking on their stress. And that's absolutely not what we need to do. That's not what God wants from us when we go to help others. And so don't let their stress become your stress. You can only do what you can only do and plant those seeds, be kind, show those fruits, but take care of yourself too. Yeah, pray. What can I do in this situation? What can I say? That way, hopefully, you can keep their stress separate from yours because that's definitely not going to help if that stress just grows and snowballs, and then neither of you are going to be very productive or stress free.
Very wise words, Julie. Any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah. So we talked about, taking on their feelings and their stress. However, if the reason that you're feeling stressed is because they're your co-teacher and you're afraid that their actions may reflect on you, we definitely have to reframe our mind in that aspect. So if you're stressing because maybe they run their classroom different than you do, or maybe their test scores aren't reflecting your test scores. And so it's important to not let their actions feel like it reflects on you. Like you're responsible for you, you do your best. And so don't take that on either, because that's certainly not the way we want to go about things.
Yes, and man, there's a whole other separate conversation we could have there around, like, when to advocate and all of that, but yes,
Mhm,
recognizing that we are called to do our best
mhm,
and leaving results in his hands, right? Like, letting God take care of what is out of our control. That's such wisdom to share.
mhm.
Well, thank you guys so much for being with us. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer on the show, you can go to teachfortheheart.com/teacher talk and submit your question there. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us. We look forward to speaking with you again soon. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. All views and opinions are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of the Herzog Foundation. We'll talk to you again soon. In the meantime, teacher, remember, God is at work in you and through you, and he's using you to make a difference. Keep your eyes on him and teach for the heart.